Show me America's lowest price car. Show me America's lowest priced car. Show me America's...
America's lowest priced car is the economical AMC Gremlin.
Honest.
AMC Gremlin proved that half a car is worse than none. Welcome to The Car Professor, the channel where we celebrate automotive brilliance and occasionally roast the disasters that dared to roll off the assembly line. Today, we're dissecting the AMC Gremlin, a car that somehow managed to be both quirky and utterly baffling. Born in an era of innovation, the Gremlin stood out, not for its greatness, but for its sheer audacity to be weird and underwhelming in equal measure. From its chopped-off design that looked like it was created on a Friday afternoon to its array of mechanical missteps, the Gremlin remains a prime example of what happens when ambition meets a limited budget. But hey, at least it gave us something to talk about. If you're ready for a ride through the quirks, flaws, and outright fails of this automotive oddity, buckle up and subscribe to The Car Professor. Let's dive in. 1. Awkward styling. The AMC Gremlin styling was its most divisive feature. Its front end looked like a normal compact car, but as you moved to the rear, things got weird. The abrupt cutoff of the roofline and the slanted back end gave it the appearance of a car that had been designed in a hurry, or chopped in half by accident. It was as if the designers had a deadline looming and decided, let's just stop here. While the intent was to stand out in a competitive market, the Gremlin's unique look often invited mockery rather than admiration. It lacked the graceful lines of competitors like the Volkswagen Beetle or the modern hatchback design of the Honda Civic. One magazine described the Gremlin as a clown car with a mean streak, perfectly encapsulating its oddball appearance. In the end, the Gremlin's styling wasn't just polarizing. It was a constant reminder that sometimes being different isn't enough. The car didn't just look quirky, it looked unfinished, setting the tone for its reputation as a rushed and poorly executed vehicle. If you thought the Gremlin's awkward styling was only skin deep, think again. Its boxy, truncated shape made it one of the least aerodynamic cars in its class. The sharp angles and abrupt rear created significant drag, which not only hurt fuel efficiency, but also impacted performance. The Gremlin's designers may have prioritized uniqueness, but they forgot that air resistance is a thing. On highways, the Gremlin struggled to maintain speed without guzzling gas, a problem exacerbated by its outdated engines. Wind noise was another consequence of its poor aerodynamics, turning long trips into loud, exhausting experiences. The car's shape worked against it at every turn, turning even simple drives into frustrating ordeals. For a car marketed as a practical compact, the Gremlin's lack of aerodynamic efficiency was a glaring oversight. It wasn't just bad design, it was bad physics, and the car's performance suffered for it. 3. Underwhelming engine choices. The Gremlin offered a range of inline-six engines, starting with a 3.3L base engine. While these engines were simple and durable, they were also noisy, heavy, and underpowered. The base engine produced just 128 horsepower. Not terrible for the time, but it struggled to move the Gremlin's hefty frame with any sense of urgency. The optional 5.0L V8, meant to inject some excitement into the lineup, wasn't much better. It added weight to an already unbalanced chassis and guzzled fuel like a full-sized muscle car without delivering the same thrills. Drivers who opted for the V8 often complained that it felt more like a marketing gimmick than a legitimate performance upgrade. In the end, the Gremlin's engine options failed to impress. They were too thirsty for a compact car, too sluggish for a sporty car, and too outdated to compete with more modern powertrains from rivals like Honda and Toyota. The result? A lineup that couldn't satisfy anyone. 4. Cramped rear seats. Despite its compact size, the Gremlin still tried to fit a back seat into its quirky design. The result was a space so cramped that it felt more like a penalty box than a passenger area. Legroom was almost non-existent, and the slanted roofline left taller passengers hunched over like they were plotting an escape. For families, the rear seats were more of a theoretical feature than a practical one. Parents frequently joked that the only people who could comfortably sit back there were toddlers or luggage. Even accessing the rear seats was a challenge, with narrow door openings that made getting in and out an exercise in patience. The cramped rear seats weren't just a design flaw, they were a sign of a car that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. It wasn't spacious enough for families, sporty enough for enthusiasts, or practical enough for everyday use. Instead, it fell awkwardly in between, leaving no one satisfied. 5. Minimal cargo space. One of the biggest selling points of a compact hatchback is its ability to maximize cargo space. Unfortunately, the Gremlin's slanted rear end severely limited its utility. The odd shape of the trunk meant that larger items simply wouldn't fit, and the lack of a true hatchback design made loading and unloading cumbersome. Even with the rear seats folded down, the cargo area felt cramped and awkward. Competitors like the Volkswagen Beetle and the Honda Civic hatchback offered far more practical storage solutions, making the Gremlin feel like an afterthought in comparison. Owners often complained that even grocery trips required careful planning to avoid leaving items behind. For a car that was supposed to offer practicality in a small package, the Gremlin's cargo space was a major disappointment. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was outright impractical, turning potential buyers toward more functional alternatives. 6. Cheap interior materials. Stepping inside the AMC Gremlin was a lesson in cost-cutting measures. The cabin was adorned with hard plastics and vinyl surfaces that not only looked inexpensive, but felt it too. The dashboard, for instance, was made of a rigid plastic prone to cracking under exposure to sunlight and temperature changes. Over time, these cracks became more than just cosmetic flaws. They could lead to rattles and even sharp edges that posed minor safety hazards. The seats were another area where quality was compromised. Upholstered with thin fabric over minimal padding, they offered little in the way of comfort or durability. Frequent complaints included fabric tearing at the seams and cushioning that flattened out after just a few thousand miles. The carpeting was equally subpar, often thinning out or unraveling with regular use, revealing the bare metal floor underneath. Even the small details weren't spared. Knobs and switches felt flimsy and could break off with moderate use, and the faux wood trim was easily scratched or peeled away. Compared to competitors who were beginning to offer more refined interiors, even in their economy models, the Gremlin's interior felt outdated and cheap, diminishing the overall driving experience. 7. Reliability issues. Owning an AMC Gremlin often meant getting acquainted with your local mechanic. The car was notorious for a host of reliability problems that plagued owners throughout its lifespan. One common issue was the tendency for the engine to overheat. The cooling system was underpowered for the engine's needs, leading to frequent overheating, especially during warmer months or in stop-and-go traffic. Electrical problems were another frequent headache. Faulty alternators and starters were common, causing issues from dimming headlights to a car that simply wouldn't start. The wiring harnesses themselves were prone to corrosion and poor connections, leading to unpredictable electrical gremlins, no pun intended, that were difficult to diagnose and fix. The carburetor, essential for mixing air and fuel, often fell out of adjustment, leading to poor fuel economy and rough idling. Vacuum leaks were also a regular complaint, affecting engine performance and drivability. These issues weren't just isolated incidents. They were widespread enough to tarnish the Gremlin's reputation for dependability, making it a less appealing choice for consumers seeking a reliable daily driver. When it came time to stop, the Gremlin didn't inspire much confidence. Early models were equipped with drum brakes on all four wheels, a technology that was already being phased out in favor of more effective disc brakes. Drum brakes tend to fade under heavy use as heat builds up, and in the Gremlin, this manifested as a spongy brake pedal and increased stopping distances. The lack of power-assisted brakes in base models meant that drivers had to apply significant force to the brake pedal to achieve adequate stopping power. This was not only tiring, but also potentially dangerous in emergency situations where split-second reactions are crucial. Even when front disc brakes became available in later models, they were often an optional extra rather than standard equipment. The braking system's inadequacies were a significant safety concern. On wet or slippery roads, the brakes could lock up easily, leading to skids and loss of control. In an era when automotive safety was gaining more attention, the Gremlin's subpar braking system was a glaring flaw that AMC failed to adequately address.
9. Uninspired suspension.
The ride quality of the AMC Gremlin left much to be desired. Utilizing a basic suspension setup with front coil springs and rear leaf springs, the car provided a driving experience that was both harsh and unresponsive. The suspension did little to absorb road imperfections, resulting in a jarring ride over even mildly rough surfaces. Handling was equally lackluster. The Gremlin exhibited significant body roll during cornering, and the steering lacked the precision and feedback that drivers desired. The car's short wheelbase contributed to a tendency to pitch and bounce, making highway driving particularly uncomfortable. This was exacerbated by the vehicle's poor weight distribution, which affected its balance and stability. While competitors were investing in more advanced suspension technologies to improve ride comfort and handling dynamics, the Gremlin remained stuck with an outdated system. This not only made the car less enjoyable to drive, but also contributed to driver fatigue on longer journeys, further diminishing its appeal in the compact car market. If serenity was what you sought in a vehicle, the AMC Gremlin was not going to deliver. The car was notorious for its noisy cabin, where engine roar, road noise, and wind intrusion combined to create a less than pleasant auditory environment. The lack of adequate insulation meant that sounds from the drivetrain and the road were ever present, turning conversations into shouting matches at highway speeds. The engine's coarse operation was a significant contributor to the noise level. Acceleration was accompanied by a loud growl that lacked any sporty character, sounding more strained than powerful. Wind noise was another issue, particularly around the windows and doors where seals were insufficient. This created a constant whooshing sound that grew louder with speed. Rattles and squeaks from the interior trim added to the cacophony. As the cheaply made interior components aged, they began to loosen and vibrate, especially over uneven terrain. This symphony of unwanted sounds made driving the Gremlin a tiring experience, detracting from any enjoyment the car might have offered. (11) Questionable build quality. The AMC Gremlin's assembly quality raised eyebrows even in its own time. Inconsistent panel gaps and misaligned body parts were common right off the showroom floor. It wasn't unusual to find doors that didn't close properly or hoods that sat unevenly. Such issues weren't just cosmetic. They hinted at deeper problems in the manufacturing process. Inside, the situation didn't improve. Interior fittings like the dashboard, door panels, and center console often exhibited poor fitment, leading to gaps and edges that didn't line up. Materials wore out quickly, with fabrics fading or tearing, and plastics becoming brittle and cracking. Electrical components like switches and gauges were prone to early failure, leaving drivers without essential information like fuel levels or engine temperature. These build quality concerns led to frequent repairs and a general sense of frustration among owners. The lack of attention to detail not only undermined the car's reliability, but also its resale value. In an era when competitors were starting to prioritize quality control, the Gremlin's shortcomings stood out even more starkly. 12. Limited safety features. Safety was not a strong suit for the AMC Gremlin. Basic features that were becoming standard in the industry were either optional or absent altogether. For instance, while some competitors were beginning to include anti-lock braking systems and airbags, the Gremlin stuck with the bare minimum. Seatbelts were standard, but they were rudimentary lap belts without shoulder restraints in the early models. The car's structural integrity was another concern. The lack of crumple zones meant that in a collision, impact forces were not effectively absorbed, increasing the risk of injury to occupants. Side impact protection was minimal due to the thin doors and lack of reinforcement beams. The steering column was not collapsible, posing a severe risk in frontal collisions. These shortcomings were highlighted by poor performance in crash tests, where the Gremlin often failed to meet emerging safety standards. For consumers becoming more safety conscious, especially those with families, the Gremlin's lack of protective features was a significant deterrent. This negligence in prioritizing occupant safety further tarnished the car's reputation and marketability. Despite being marketed as a practical compact car, the AMC Gremlin had surprisingly poor fuel efficiency. Its outdated carburetor technology and hefty inline-six engines made it far less economical than competitors like the Volkswagen Beetle or Honda Civic. While rivals were innovating with lightweight designs and efficient powertrains, the Gremlin guzzled gas, often achieving just 15 to 20 miles per gallon, on par with larger sedans and muscle cars of the era. This inefficiency was exacerbated by its poor aerodynamics. The Gremlin's boxy shape created excessive drag, forcing the engine to work harder, especially at highway speeds. Owners frequently reported disappointment when their compact car required frequent trips to the gas station, erasing any cost savings they might have hoped for. In the wake of the 1973 oil crisis, where fuel efficiency became a top priority for car buyers, the Gremlin's thirsty engines and outdated technology felt like a relic of a bygone era. It was a compact car that managed to miss the mark on one of its most critical promises: economy. 14. Unstable at high speeds. Driving the AMC Gremlin at highway speeds was a nerve-wracking experience. The car's short wheelbase and uneven weight distribution made it feel twitchy and unstable, especially when passing larger vehicles or encountering crosswinds. The suspension, already unrefined, struggled to maintain composure at higher speeds, amplifying the car's tendency to wander and sway. This instability was further worsened by its boxy design, which acted like a sail in windy conditions. Drivers often had to wrestle with the steering wheel to keep the car in its lane, and sudden gusts could cause alarming shifts in trajectory. Many owners avoided highways altogether, preferring slower back roads where the car's flaws were less pronounced. For a car aimed at young buyers and commuters, its inability to handle high-speed driving safely was a significant drawback. The Gremlin's lack of poise on highways wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous, turning what should have been routine drives into tense, exhausting affairs. 15. Rust problems. Rust was an ever-present enemy of the AMC Gremlin. Like many cars of its time, the Gremlin suffered from inadequate rust-proofing, but its thin steel panels and poorly sealed seams made it particularly vulnerable. Even in relatively mild climates, rust would begin to appear within a few years, often starting around the wheel arches, door sills, and undercarriage. In colder regions, where road salt was a constant during winter, the problem became catastrophic. Entire floor pans would corrode, leaving gaping holes that allowed water, dirt, and cold air to infiltrate the cabin. Owners frequently reported having to patch or replace major structural components just to keep the car drivable. Rust wasn't just a cosmetic issue. It compromised the car's safety and resale value. A rusty Gremlin wasn't just an eyesore. It was a reminder of AMC's failure to invest in basic corrosion prevention measures, costing owners both time and money. And 16. Odd marketing campaigns. AMC's attempts to market the Gremlin as a fun, quirky alternative to more traditional compacts often backfired. The advertising leaned heavily into the car's unconventional design, but instead of highlighting its strengths, the campaigns often made the car seem like a joke. One infamous ad featured a Gremlin parked next to an actual Gremlin, the mythical creature, suggesting a sense of humor that not all buyers appreciated. The car was pitched as a budget-friendly option for young drivers, but the ads often emphasized its oddity rather than its practicality or performance. Slogans like, "A little car with a big advantage," fell flat when buyers realized the car didn't offer much in the way of actual advantages. Instead of being seen as innovative or daring, the Gremlin was viewed as gimmicky and unserious.
This misstep in marketing didn't just fail to attract new buyers, it actively alienated those looking for a reliable, sensible compact. The campaigns became part of the car's lore, remembered more for their awkwardness than their effectiveness. 17. Unreliable gauges. The dashboard gauges in the AMC Gremlin were as unpredictable as the car itself. Essential instruments like the speedometer and fuel gauge were prone to failure, often leaving drivers guessing about critical information. One common issue involved the speedometer cable, which had a tendency to snap, rendering the gauge useless. The fuel gauge was another source of frustration. Many owners reported that the needle would hover near full, no matter how much gas was actually in the tank, leading to unexpected stalls on the side of the road. Fixing these issues was rarely straightforward, as the underlying components were cheaply made and difficult to access. This lack of reliability extended to other dashboard elements, such as warning lights that flickered intermittently or failed to illuminate when necessary. For a car already riddled with mechanical issues, the Gremlin's unreliable gauges added another layer of uncertainty, turning every drive into a guessing game. 18. Uninspiring handling. The Gremlin's handling left much to be desired. The car's steering was vague and unresponsive, giving drivers little confidence in its ability to navigate corners or tight spaces. The manual rack and pinion steering system, while simple, lacked the precision found in competitors, making the car feel disconnected from the road. Body roll was another major issue. The Gremlin leaned excessively during turns, even at moderate speeds, due to its short wheelbase and soft suspension setup. Combined with the car's instability at high speeds, this made for a driving experience that was neither fun nor particularly safe. Drivers often felt like they were wrestling the car rather than controlling it. Competitors like the Volkswagen Beetle and Honda Civic offered more refined handling dynamics, leaving the Gremlin feeling outdated and clumsy. It wasn't just uninspiring, it actively discouraged spirited driving, making it hard to recommend to anyone looking for more than basic transportation. The AMC Gremlin's exhaust system was a frequent source of complaints. Made from low-quality materials, the mufflers and exhaust pipes were prone to rust and breakage, often within just a few years of ownership. This led to loud, unpleasant noises that only added to the car's reputation as a poorly built machine. Leaks in the exhaust system were another common issue. These not only affected engine performance, but also created safety concerns, as exhaust fumes could sometimes find their way into the cabin. Owners often reported having to replace the entire system multiple times over the car's lifespan, turning what should have been a simple maintenance item into a recurring expense. For many, the exhaust problems were emblematic of the Gremlin's overall design flaws. Instead of being a reliable compact, it felt like a constant reminder of the corners AMC had cut during production, leaving owners frustrated and out of pocket. The AMC Gremlin's resale value dropped faster than its owner's patience. Within just a few years, the car's reputation for poor reliability, awkward styling, and lackluster performance made it nearly impossible to sell. Dealers were often reluctant to take Gremlins as trade-ins, offering laughably low values that reflected its tarnished reputation. In private sales, the Gremlin didn't fare much better. Prospective buyers were well aware of the car's many flaws,
and owners frequently found themselves haggling over prices that barely covered the cost of a tank of gas. Stories of Gremlins being sold for less than $500 became common, cementing its status as one of the worst automotive investments of the 1970s. The rapid depreciation wasn't just a financial blow. It was a reflection of the car's inability to inspire long-term confidence. While competitors like the Honda Civic and Volkswagen Beetle retained value thanks to their reliability and iconic appeal, the Gremlin seemed destined for scrapyards and junkyards before it reached its 10th birthday. For a car that debuted in the 1970s, the AMC Gremlin was surprisingly outdated in terms of features. While competitors began offering conveniences like adjustable steering columns, intermittent wipers, and even basic audio systems as standard, the Gremlin lagged behind. Base models often came stripped of even the most basic comforts, such as a radio or clock. Power steering and air conditioning were optional extras, and even when added, they often performed poorly. The lack of innovation extended to safety features, with the Gremlin failing to include amenities like 3-point seatbelts or anti-lock brakes that were beginning to emerge in the market. The absence of these features made the car feel cheap and under-equipped. For buyers seeking a modern driving experience, the Gremlin felt like a relic. Its Spartan offerings weren't just uncompetitive, they were a glaring reminder that AMC was cutting corners to stay afloat, leaving the consumer to bear the brunt of the compromises. 22. Overheating problems. The Gremlin's cooling system was notoriously underwhelming, leading to frequent overheating issues that left drivers stranded on the side of the road. The radiator, while adequate on paper, struggled to keep the engine cool under real-world conditions, particularly during hot weather or prolonged stop-and-go traffic. One common issue was the fan belt, which was prone to slipping or breaking, leaving the radiator without sufficient airflow. Water pumps also had a tendency to fail prematurely, compounding the problem. For many owners, the sight of steam rising from the hood became an all-too-familiar occurrence, prompting jokes that the Gremlin came with a built-in sauna. Overheating wasn't just an inconvenience. It often caused more severe damage, such as warped cylinder heads and blown gaskets. These repairs weren't cheap, and they only added to the car's already high maintenance costs. For a compact car marketed as practical and affordable, the Gremlin's cooling issues were a major betrayal. The Gremlin's truncated rear end wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it also created significant mechanical and handling challenges. The short, slanted rear affected the car's weight distribution, making the back end feel light and unsteady, particularly during cornering or braking. This imbalance led to a lack of confidence on winding roads, where the rear wheels often felt like they were fighting to maintain traction. The design also amplified the car's tendency to fishtail on slippery surfaces, such as wet pavement or snow. Many owners reported that even mild braking on a curve could cause the rear end to slide unpredictably, turning minor driving errors into potential accidents. Combined with the vague steering and stiff suspension, the Gremlin's rear end instability made it a nightmare for inexperienced drivers. This flaw wasn't just a quirk, it was a fundamental problem that highlighted the compromises AMC made to achieve the car's unusual design. Instead of being quirky and practical, the Gremlin became quirky and dangerous, further tarnishing its reputation among buyers. The Gremlin's sloping roofline and thick rear pillars severely restricted rearward visibility, making driving and parking unnecessarily challenging. The design created large blind spots that drivers had to work around, particularly when merging on highways or backing into parking spaces. For a car marketed as a city-friendly compact, this oversight was particularly egregious. The rear window, while large in surface area, was angled in such a way that reflections and glare often obscured the view. This was especially problematic at night or in low-light conditions, where headlight glare from other cars turned the rear window into a distorted mirror. Side mirrors were small and poorly placed, further complicating the issue. Owners frequently resorted to aftermarket mirror extensions or blind spot mirrors to improve visibility, but these fixes didn't solve the fundamental design flaws. For many, the limited visibility turned routine maneuvers into nerve-wracking challenges, making the Gremlin a frustrating car to drive in busy urban environments. 25. Outdated transmission options. The AMC Gremlin's transmission options felt outdated even when the car was new. The standard 3-speed manual transmission was clunky and imprecise, requiring frequent adjustments to stay in proper working order. The shift linkage was prone to binding or wearing out, making gear changes a frustrating exercise for drivers. The optional automatic transmission wasn't much better. It was a basic 3-speed unit that lacked the refinement and smoothness of offerings from competitors like Honda or Toyota. Gear shifts were often jerky, and the transmission was slow to respond under acceleration, leaving drivers with a delayed and unsatisfying driving experience. These outdated transmissions didn't just affect drivability, they also hurt the car's fuel efficiency and performance. In an era when other manufacturers were introducing 4-speed manuals and more advanced automatics, the Gremlin's drivetrain felt like it belonged to a previous decade, further diminishing its appeal in an already competitive market. The AMC Gremlin's ride height struck an awkward balance. It was too low to feel practical, but not low enough to convey sportiness. For taller drivers and passengers, entering and exiting the car was a challenge, especially with its narrow doors and low roofline. Getting in often felt like crouching into a bunker, and getting out required awkward maneuvers that could strain your back or knees. The seating position inside the car didn't help matters. Drivers sat low to the ground, giving a limited view of the road ahead, and making them feel boxed in. The low ride height also meant the undercarriage was more susceptible to scraping on curbs and uneven terrain, adding to maintenance woes. In an era when practicality was becoming a key selling point for compact cars, the Gremlin's ride height missed the mark. Instead of offering easy access or sporty handling, it delivered neither, leaving drivers with yet another reason to grumble about the car's design flaws. 27. Inconsistent paint. Quality. The Gremlin's paint job was as hit or miss as its engineering. Factory-applied paint often lacked the durability to withstand the elements, leading to premature fading, chipping, and peeling. Cars painted in darker colors were particularly susceptible to uneven fading, leaving some Gremlins looking patchy and worn within just a few years of ownership. The problem was worsened by poor surface preparation at the factory. Paint often adhered poorly to the body panels, causing entire sections to flake off, especially around edges and seams. For owners in harsher climates, exposure to salt, sun, and moisture accelerated the deterioration, making rust spots even more prominent. Repainting a Gremlin wasn't a simple fix either. The car's unique shape and budget-friendly materials meant that achieving a consistent and professional finish was difficult and costly. For many, the Gremlin's shoddy paint wasn't just an aesthetic flaw, it was a symbol of AMC's lack of attention to detail. Driving the Gremlin in the rain was a test of patience, thanks to its underpowered and unreliable windshield wipers. The wiper motor was prone to failure, often leaving the blades stuck mid-swipe. Even when working, the wipers moved sluggishly across the windshield, struggling to clear heavy rain or snow effectively. Another common issue was uneven wiping due to poor blade alignment. The wipers often missed large sections of the windshield, leaving streaks and reducing visibility. In colder climates, the wipers frequently froze to the windshield as the defroster was too weak to prevent ice buildup. For a car marketed as an everyday driver, the Gremlin's wiper system was an ongoing frustration. Owners often resorted to manual cleaning or aftermarket upgrades. But these fixes didn't address the underlying problem, a poorly designed system that was woefully inadequate for its purpose. While AMC marketed the Gremlin as a car for everyone, its actual appeal was far more niche. Its unusual design and quirky image resonated with a small segment of buyers, but alienated many more. For those seeking a practical, reliable, compact car, the Gremlin's eccentricity felt more like a gimmick than a selling point. The car's identity crisis didn't help. It wasn't sporty enough to compete with coupes, nor was it practical enough to go head-to-head with hatchbacks. Its limited functionality and awkward styling left it in an uncomfortable middle ground, appealing to neither families nor enthusiasts. This lack of broad appeal hurt sales and tarnished its reputation over time. While some buyers appreciated the Gremlin's oddball charm, most viewed it as a curiosity rather than a serious contender in the compact car market. 30. Lack of innovation. In an era when competitors were pushing the boundaries of automotive design and engineering, the AMC Gremlin felt like a relic. Its underlying platform was based on older AMC designs, and the car introduced few, if any, meaningful innovations. While other manufacturers were experimenting with front-wheel drive, better aerodynamics, and advanced materials, the Gremlin remained stuck in the past. Even its standout features, like the optional V8 engine, were more about brute force than technological progress. The Gremlin failed to introduce anything new to the compact car market, relying instead on its quirky design to stand out. This lack of innovation wasn't just disappointing, it was a missed opportunity in a rapidly evolving industry. By the end of its production run, the Gremlin was thoroughly outclassed by competitors. It became a symbol of AMC's inability to keep up with the times, and its failure to innovate ensured its place in automotive history as a cautionary tale rather than a success story. The AMC Gremlin wasn't just a car. It was a gamble that didn't quite pay off. It tried to capture the hearts of budget-conscious buyers with its compact size and unique design. But what it delivered was a mashup of compromises and quirks that left most scratching their heads. From its awkward styling and lack of innovation to its constant mechanical woes, the Gremlin became a cautionary tale in how not to build a car. And yet, for all its flaws, the Gremlin carved out a strange legacy. It's a car that collectors now seek for its sheer oddity, and a symbol of an era when American automakers were struggling to adapt. Love it or hate it, the Gremlin has earned its place in automotive history as a car that dared to be different and spectacularly flawed. Thanks for watching The Car Professor. Don't forget to subscribe, and let us know your favorite or least favorite Gremlin moment in the comments below.